Long before Silicon Valley startups and billion-dollar tech giants, before we even scrolled through social media or asked AI for answers, one man quietly built the foundations of the internet. Now you might think this guy should be the most popular and very rich. But hold it right there. No fame, no fortune, no credit. He wasn't a CEO of your multi-billion-dollar companies or a media darling. He didn't give flashy TED Talks or launch IPOs. But he just dreamed of a world where information flowed freely, faster, safer, and smarter than ever before. And without him, none of what we take for granted today would even exist. This is the story of the forgotten genius who may have invented the internet and how the system buried his name. Now ask most people who invented the internet, and they'll give you the usual suspects. Tim Berners-Lee, the father of the World Wide Web. Or maybe Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn, the creators of TCP or IP. For easy understanding, these are the rules the internet follows to move data. And yes, all these individuals played key roles. But here's what nobody tells you. These men didn't invent the idea of the internet. They built on it. But before you launch click off, let's first rewind a bit. Decades earlier, when most people still used rotary phones and the idea of a computer network sounded like science fiction, a quiet engineer named Paul Barron had already figured out the blueprint. Around the same time, a French computer scientist named Louis Pouzin was building his own version of a global network. One so visionary, it actually influenced the internet's official protocols. But neither of them is in the history books. So what happened? For better understanding, let's time travel to the late 1950s. The Cold War was in full swing. The United States was terrified of one thing: a nuclear attack. And there was one problem nobody could ignore: communication. If the Soviet Union launched a nuclear missile and knocked out phone lines or command centers, America could be left deaf and blind in an instant. No way to call for help. No way to respond. The system was fragile, and everyone knew it. That's when the US government turned to a strange, little-known think tank called the Rand Corporation. And that's where Paul Barron entered the picture. Barron wasn't your average scientist. He was quiet, deeply analytical, and obsessed with solving complex problems. While others were looking for patches to fix the existing phone systems, Barron had a wild idea. What if the entire network didn't have a central point at all? 3. Paul Barron's radical idea. At the time, communication worked like old-school phone calls. You'd set up a direct line between two people, like laying down a single wire between two cans. It worked, but if that wire broke? Game over. Barron proposed something totally different. What if, instead of one direct line, information was broken up into small pieces? He called them packets, and sent separately through a huge web of routes. These packets could travel different paths, avoid damaged parts of the network, and then be reassembled at the other end. It was like sending a puzzle through dozens of different mail carriers, and still having the full picture arrive at its destination. This method, which he called packet switching, was completely unheard of. To the engineers at the time, it sounded crazy. But it was genius. Barron spent years developing the idea. He wrote an 11-volume report laying out exactly how this could work, even building diagrams that eerily resemble the way the internet works today. But when he pitched it to AT&T, the most powerful telecom company at the time, they laughed him out of the room. Literally. Executives told him the idea was impossible. Too expensive. Too weird. One of them even said, "You're dreaming." So, they shelved the report, and Paul Barron quietly moved on. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, while Barron was facing rejection in the US, another brilliant mind was working on a similar idea in Europe. Louis Pouzin, a French engineer, was trying to solve a different problem. In the early 1970s, he was building a network called Cyclades. It was meant to connect different research centers in France, like a mini-internet. But Pouzin ran into the same challenge. How do you send information through a network that could go down at any moment? His solution? You probably guessed it, packet switching. He independently came up with the same core idea as Barron. Information would be chopped into smaller pieces, sent through different routes, and reassembled at the end. Pouzin's version even gave birth to another idea, end-to-end communication, which later became a key part of how TCP or IP, basically referred to as the backbone of the internet that works today. But just like Barron, Pouzin's work ran into a wall. The French government didn't fully support it. Funding dried up, and the project was eventually scrapped. But before it died, researchers at ARPA in the United States took notice. We shall learn more about this agency later in the video. At the time, the agency studied Cyclades. They realized what worked, and they built on top of it. Back in the United States, the government agency called ARPA was working on a network to connect universities and military computers. It would now become known as ARPANET, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. The engineers working on ARPANET, especially Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn, used packet switching as their foundation. They even admitted they were influenced by both Paul Barron and Louis Pouzin. But guess who got all the credit? The people who built the final product. The names who implemented, not the ones who imagined and laid the foundation. It's like crediting the Wright brothers for air travel, but forgetting the people who designed the engine, invented flight theory, or imagined the airplane in the first place. Barron and Pouzin weren't part of the final team, so they were pushed aside in the story, which obviously explains the fact that almost no one knows about them and their vital contributions. Why were they forgotten? But don't let anyone confuse you. It wasn't just bad luck. There were deeper reasons why Barron and Pouzin disappeared from the spotlight, and I will tell you exactly why. First, bureaucracy. Big companies like AT&T hated the idea of decentralized networks. It meant losing control. Obviously, knowing companies well and their driving motive in the market, this would be the last thing they would accept. In their minds, the internet Barron proposed was a threat to their business model, so they ignored it. Second, it was politics. Who didn't see this coming? Pouzin's work didn't get the support it needed in France, and American developers naturally built systems that favored American researchers. So it was just a matter of time until our heroes would be sidelined. Third, and maybe most importantly, timing. Barron and Pouzin were ahead of their time. Too far ahead. When you're too early, people don't understand you. Naturally, they resist change. So, the world moved forward using their ideas, but forgot their names. Today, the entire internet runs on packet switching. Whether you're watching a YouTube video, sending a message, or streaming music, your data is traveling in tiny packets across a vast, decentralized network, exactly like Barron and Pouzin described. Their vision was networks without a central point of failure, with smart, flexible routing, is the very reason the internet can survive outages, local attacks, or even natural disasters. Without them, we'd be living in a very different world. Paul Barron didn't become rich. He didn't chase fame. He kept working in technology, quietly inventing tools and systems that improved the world. He passed away in 2011, still unknown to most people, but respected by those in the know. Louis Pouzin, now in his 90s, still advocates for open networks, pushing back against the corporate control of the internet. In 2013, even Tim Berners-Lee publicly said Pouzin deserved far more recognition. But by then, history had already been written. The internet wasn't born in a lab overnight. It was imagined piece by piece by people you've never heard of, people who didn't fit the mold and never stopped dreaming. We owe them more than credit. We owe them our connection. Because without Paul Barron and Louis Pouzin, you probably wouldn't be watching this video right now. If you enjoyed this video, there's a great chance you would like to check out our other videos, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on this valuable content. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Stay safe.